For nearly a decade, Five Nights at Freddy's was defined by what you couldn't see. It was defined by static, by claustrophobia, and by the crushing anxiety of being stuck in a single chair while something ancient and angry moved in the dark. For a long time, this franchise ran on the Click Team Fusion engine. This era, which we can call the Click Team era, was defined by 2D images, pre-rendered graphics. These technical limitations were not an obstacle, they were a key component of the horror. However, the franchise eventually transitioned to Stillwell Studios. They introduced the Unreal Engine, high-fidelity graphics, and free roam gameplay. Yet, despite the increase in budget and studio resources, many argue that the horror element had been significantly diminished. The argument stands that Stillwell Studios didn't just modernize FNaF, they fundamentally altered the identity of the Click Team era. The aesthetic of the Click Team games was defined by grit. Because the engine relied on pre-rendered images, the environments felt uncanny and dirty. The visual style contributed to a sense of unease. The world felt lived in and unsafe. There's a valid argument regarding the uncanny valley in graphical fidelity when a horror game utilizes lower resolution or pre-rendered graphics. The player's imagination is forced to fill in the gaps. A vague shadow is often more terrifying than a clearly defined object. In contrast, the high-fidelity ray tracing of the Stillwell era removes this mystery by pushing for graphical realism. The environments become too clean and sterile. The Mega Pizzaplex is a technical achievement, but it lacks the oppressive atmosphere of the original pizzerias. The shift from a cursed aesthetic to a corporate polished aesthetic has stripped away a significant layer of the franchise's fear factor. From a technical standpoint, the shift in scope created significant issues regarding optimization. The original Five Nights at Freddy's titles were incredibly accessible. They could run on almost any basic computer, allowing a massive audience to experience the game firsthand. Security Breach, however, launched with incredibly high system requirements. The ambition to create a massive, detailed world resulted in a game that was poorly optimized for many players. This raises a question of necessity. Did the game need such high-end graphical demands to be effective? The original games proved that high-fidelity textures are not a requirement for effective horror. Simple design and sound engineering are often more effective.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name. But I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called.
Beyond the visuals, the most significant criticism concerns the narrative. The Click Team era had a definitive conclusion. Pizzeria Simulator provided a narrative endpoint. The locations were burned, the antagonist was destroyed, and the spirits were freed. It offered closure to the story. The Stillwell era effectively undid this conclusion by reintroducing the primary antagonist or a mimic program acting as the antagonist. The narrative weight of the previous game is undermined. This decision creates a sense of narrative futility. If the events of the Pizzeria Simulator did not permanently stop the threat, then the player's efforts in the previous games feel less impactful. The transition from a supernatural ghost story to a sci-fi plot involving AI viruses and the Mimic feels like a departure from the series' roots. It complicates the lore without adding the emotional depth that defined the original Missing Children storyline. Okay, put the pitchforks down for a second. I have to be fair. As much as I worship the Click Team era, we have to admit one thing. You can't make the exact same game 10 times in a row. Eventually, sitting in a chair checking cameras gets stale. Steel Wool attempted a refresh, and honestly, some of it is fun. Exploring the Pizzaplex for the first time is cool, the scale is impressive, and let's not pretend the DJ Music Man section wasn't actually actually a banger. Like, let's be honest. And regarding Secret of the Mimic, look, I hate that the Mimic replaced Afton, but if I take off my nostalgia goggles for a second, an endoskeleton that wears people like skin suits is actually pretty terrifying. It's like classic FNaF body horror. The problem isn't the Mimic itself, it's the fact that it hijacked the story that was already finished. Also, I'm not afraid to admit, I actually like the gameplay in Secret of the Mimic, so I'm just gonna throw that out there. Okay, for the conclusion, I'm gonna let my beautiful girlfriend do this for me because I think it's cute. And yeah, enjoy.
Ultimately, the impact of Steel Wool Studios has been divisive. They modernized the gameplay and expanded the lore, but in doing so, they lost the gritty indie atmosphere that made the original games a phenomenon. For many longtime fans, the most effective way to reconcile these differences is to view the franchise in two distinct eras. The Click Team era tells a complete, tragic story ending with Pizzeria Simulator. The Steel Wool era can be viewed as a separate spin-off, continuity, a high-budget expansion that exists alongside rather than replacing the original story. While the franchise has grown in size and spectacle, the simplicity and raw tension of the original 4 games remain the gold standard for the series.